The performance of the British Nationalists during the general election was utterly abysmal. And I'm not talking about the actual number of votes that they scored or lack of votes that they scored. What I'm talking about primarily is the likes of Mark Collet and Kenny Smith, respectively, of Patriotic Alternative and the Homeland Party. Now, I gave Kenny Smith an opportunity to prove himself after he was mired in allegations of leaking the BNP membership list. However, I was never convinced entirely by those allegations, so I gave him the opportunity, only for him to blow it all completely by urging all of his members and supporters to vote for Reform Nothing in the UK, led by fake Farage. What is the point of voting for an organisation that is wholly committed to the destruction of British nationalism? A man who gloats repeatedly about how he believes he single-handedly destroyed the BNP. In actual fact, Nick Griffin, Simon Darby, Mark Collet and a plethora of others destroyed the BNP with infighting, lying and false allegations, and also a raft of allegations regarding financial misconduct. However, that much is in the past, apparently, at least. And then we have Mark Collet, who gloated about designing leaflets for the English Democrats, particularly Steve Law's, and how he was going to do this, that and everything else for the nationalist cause. And at the end of his video, in which he told us how wonderful he was yet again, because that's all the egomaniac ever does, he tells us how wonderful he is. A man with a raft of failures under his belt, that is, believes he's wonderful. Mr. Invincible in the debate arena, apparently. He urged his supporters to vote for Reform UK as well if there was no English Democrats candidate available in their constituency. So in actual fact, both Kenny Smith and Mark Collet, Homeland Party and Patriotic Alternative, both formerly BNP, both obviously heavily involved in Patriotic Alternative until their split last year, are proxies for Reform UK. Nigel Farage is just sat back laughing at nationalists. This establishment safety valve operation, Reform UK, or as I call it, Reform Nothing in the UK, it's offering nobody any real change. Its economic policies are the stuff of fairy tales, basically. They've been costed, put to the test, and proven, basically, that none of these policies can ever work in the real world. However, let's look at Farage on the immigration issue. So he wants zero net, or which is a play on net zero net immigration. So 600,000 Brits leave the country every year to be replaced by 450,000 immigrants. This is the Reform UK policy. How does this stop the great replacement, which we all know is happening? It's not a conspiracy theory, it is an established fact across the entire Western world. Nigel Farage merely wants to slow it down a little bit. He doesn't want to stop it, he doesn't want to do anything radical. There is no agenda for genuine, sweeping reforms, which is what this country needs more than anything else. But it's like this with nationalists, and this is a very simple issue. I think all these nationalists, so-called, just need to shut up shop, basically, if they're going to continue campaigning for years, carrying out placard protests across the country, only to urge everyone to vote for Reform UK, our worst enemy, no less, at the very last minute, which is what they did at this general election. Apparently it was some clever tactical voting scheme. I don't buy into tactical voting. I don't do it. I never vote for political parties that I don't believe in. And I don't believe in any political party in Britain. I particularly don't believe in Patriotic Alternative, and the Homeland Party has already established itself as a joke going nowhere fast. So it's like this. In my opinion, this is my view, there is an excellent opportunity for all nationalists here to take over the British Democrats, which has a great party name. It can challenge Nigel Farage and topple him and bring an end to his establishment safety valve operation. But first, Jim Lethway has to go. He is not a leader. And these Christian Story Hour videos that he makes with his friends, basically, quite frankly, they just have no public appeal whatsoever. this entire policy of Christian fundamentalism that they've adopted, or more to the point, borrowed from Nick Griffin when he was the leader of the BNP, and that got nowhere as well in actual fact. It just isn't working. The British Democrats needs a completely new leadership. It needs a new manifesto, and it needs to be professionally organised to turn it into a big political fighting force to take on Farage in 2029. Now, the false prophet, Nigel, because apparently that's what his lawyer, Andrew Reid, believes he is, not a false prophet, he actually believes he's the Messiah, a Larry Grayson impersonator. When he's not impersonating Del Boy, that is, has come to save this country from ruination. It's hilarious, utterly hilarious. Now, I can understand fools falling for it, but quite frankly, nationalists who've been in this business for 20 and in some cases 30 and 40 and even 50 years, urging people to vote for Reform UK, have you lost the plot completely? You have become an absolute disgrace, a joke. You cannot emulate any of the success of European nationalist parties because you spent decades fighting each other, lying about each other, stabbing each other in the back, smearing one another. And then you have the audacity at the end of it, after 40, 30 years of this nonsense, to call for unity after you've destroyed each other and destroyed the best political vehicle we had, the British National Party. So my advice is this: let's cut the crap, shall we? Because I'm tired of looking at this crap. I'm tired of watching content creators produce drivel just to entertain a few gormless groupies who tip up a few quid to them, basically, so they don't have to go to work full time. It's like this. You either get a grip of this situation and follow the advice that I've given you, take over the British Democrats, remove Jim Lathwaite as the leader, bring in a new leadership structure, expel all the crazy extremists like Tony Lacombe and Andrew Bronze because of his involvement with the British movement, persona non grata. All of these people have to go. If you can't do this, then you need to form a new organisation with new leadership and a manifesto, basically, that can beat Nigel Farage and Reform UK. If you're not going to do this, then you may as well stop now, because all you've become for Nigel Farage and Reform UK is his very own enabling act, forgive the pun. And I don't want to enable Nigel Farage. I want to beat Nigel Farage. I want to put Reform UK into the political graveyard where it belongs, because it is just an establishment safety valve operation. It's a faction of the Tory party. And by his own admission, Farage states quite clearly, they are centre-right. They are not nationalists. They hate nationalists. No nationalist should ever urge other nationalists to vote for Reform UK. This is an absolute disgrace. And not only is it disgraceful, it's highly toxic and destructive to nationalism. We are quite literally at 1 minute to midnight in terms of nationalism in Britain. It's now or never. You have 12 months, yes, 12 months within which to get a grip of this situation and follow the advice that I've given you, or you may as well just give up, pack up shop basically, and forget any idea of campaigning politically in any capacity. And as for Mark Collett's plan to buy land that only nationalists can live on, well, to be perfectly honest with you, I think it's the stuff of Edith Blyton. Let's get back into the real world, shall we? The battle is not over unless you decide to give up. And I've outlined the reasons how and why you will be giving up within 12 months. Are you prepared to hand over the entire battle to Nigel Farage and Reform UK, or are you actually going to do something proactive, productive and professional to put nationalism back on the political scene?